So how did you spend your weekend?
You know what? I relaxed with my fiance Veronica, and then my parents are in town, so spent a little bit of time with them. It was good. Watched a little football, did a little work here and there, but it was good to be able to catch up on some rest.
And just kind of revisiting something I asked you about last week, now even more so in light of the Giants possibly not having their starting quarterback, Barkley out, Galladay possibly out. How do you kind of convince your team, that this is not a game to look past?
Yeah, I think you show them the film. I mean, I think you show them guys like Kadarius Toney making plays. I think you show their defense and how violent and disruptive they are. I mean, let's put it this way. We got the wrong guys if I have to convince them that they need to be ready to show up in this 3-hour window of time. Part of our job as coaches and players is to make sure that our weekly rhythm and our process is in alignment with peaking and playing really well in that 3 hour of time. And if you're really an ultimate competitor, and we know that every single week there's great challenges, and that's what makes this league so great. There's guys that get paid that are ready to step up if they're missing some of their key players, but we're not the team that I think we are if we're not able to handle that with maturity and let that affect our process and our ability to focus and concentrate, and also understand that, hey, I've heard this said before, humility is only a week away in this league. And if you think that you're not ready to roll every single week and that you're not going to get embarrassed, if you're not, then we're kidding ourselves. And I think why we've been able to have a little bit of success around here is because we do have the right players, we have the right coaches, and the sense of urgency is only increased as the season goes on, because the best teams just get better as this thing progresses. And if we want to continue on the trajectory that I hope we are, there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done for us to play well enough to try to get our 5th win against a really competitive football team that's beaten some really good ones, and they've been in really tight games against some outstanding football teams too. So that's the furthest thing from my mind.
And then finally, any update on Darious Williams in terms of his injury and what his availability might be?
Yeah. So, his ankle, those ankle sprains with some of those corners, Gary, can be pretty volatile. There's a possibility that we'll place him on IR, given the fact that he can return in 3 weeks. So his status, I don't think you could expect him this week. And there's a potential possibility in the next, day or so that we might place him on IR. Still a couple things that we need to get in alignment before we do that. But the anticipation, the expectation is that he will not be available this week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin?
Sean, following up on Gary's questions about facing the Giants, people will pretty easily remember the Jets game last year, even the Giants game, which was kind of a scrappy thing. But you obviously sound very confident that this is a team that won't let down. Looking back, I mean, was there something about last year's team? Is there something different about this year's team? No,
I mean, it's hard to win in this league. I mean, we didn't do enough things, every single year is a new year. But I mean, you look at that Jets team, they had played really competitive ball and had a chance to win a handful of games. We didn't play well enough to win in that game right there. I didn't coach good enough. And then the Giants game, they did a great job. They kind of hung around. They played really tough, stingy defense. We missed a couple opportunities, but we made enough plays where Darius came up in the clutch, and we ended up hitting Cup when we had to have it on a long touchdown. And so, but those games are great examples of, you just don't take anything for granted. And so I don't care what people's records are. These coaches, these players, everybody works too hard every single week for those 3 hours to try to put your team and your players in the best positions to succeed. Then these guys make plays. They do things off schedule, and that's what makes this game exciting. And so it is so difficult to win in this league, and the focus and concentration that's required, snap in and snap out, to perform at a high level in all 3 phases of the game, and then also have your performance in alignment with that preparation and letting that practice preparation and everything you do throughout the course of the week give players a quieted mind and then let it really come to life is part of what you love so much about it. It's why the feeling in the locker room is something that you can't replicate in any other situation or scenario. But it's also why, you could just go back and use example after example, week in and week out of, hey, if you are the team and if we're the team that we're capable of, we're playing a really good competitive football team. And if you don't have the maturity to block out injuries, records, different things like that, look at the tape. That's the truth teller. And that's where our players know, hey, man, I'm flipping this tape on. I'm seeing a really well-coached team. I'm seeing good personnel on all three phases. And if we're not ready to go, then we'll be sitting here saying, hey, we didn't do our job. We didn't play at high level, but we know it's going to be a battle to try to get our fifth win against a very well-coached, disciplined football team that has players on each side of the ball.
And then just one more. I saw Ashawn Robinson's snaps were down to, I think, 20%. Was there an injury involved? What's happening?
It was just kind of how the game unfolded. Sometimes a lot of those rotations, especially on the defensive line, are a product and a reflection of some of the personnel groupings that we activate and how we best feel to defend them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jordan?
Hey, Sean, again, going to be a broken record probably on this, but in terms of the explosive plays, you guys are at 40 right now. This time last year, you're at 29, but last year you guys flattened them out pretty good through the back stretch of the season. Would you remember what maybe happened and what fell into place where things started clicking from maybe development mode and putting pieces together mode into really feeling like your guys had a command of what was expected of them and philosophically the structure was in place?
Yeah, I think, I think the first thing is I think you can look at, the response after the Bills game, but I thought we played pretty well early on in that season. We played consistently well throughout the season. I think one of the things that you realize in this league is if you're at the upper echelon of the league, these coaches, these players are too competitive. You're getting studied in the offseason. And there's a blueprint and there's a plan of attack on how you want to approach those things. It's no different if you're at the upper echelon of the league offensively in the kicking game or defense. So there's different ways that people spend their whole off seasons to try to activate things that are in alignment with trying to, have success against whatever those core foundational philosophies are. That's why you hear me say it all the time, Jordan. Consistency is the truest measurement of performance. It's how do you produce year in and year out? And then also for us as coaches, how do we have the agility to know that each year is its new year? And then also each week's a new week based on, all right, how do we want to move the ball on offense? How do we want to stop people on defense? How do we want to have, how do we want to excel in the different phases of the kicking game? And so to answer your question in a long-winded way, I think guys have an understanding of it, but I think it's us continuing to figure out what's the best way for our players and our coaches to activate the things that we want to do. And what's the identity of this football team? And that's something that, we put our heads together as coaches. We're continuing to figure out how to maximize our personnel, how to maximize the 48 guys that are up during game day. You look at the explosives, it's not one all-encompassing answer. The first play of the game there, we've got an answer for it. We've got to be able to execute. I don't want to get into the specifics of what should have occurred right there, but there's been a lot of different reasons, whether it's just simple execution. There's a couple things we can do for clarity for our guys, but if there was one all-encompassing answer, it'd be a lot easier to solve. But I think there's been a lot of good things, but there's some things that we can clean up. But in regards to the explosives, I think you study it hard because your questions are so good and so detailed. I think you can see that it's not kind of one thing. It's just understanding how do we minimize that, and then how do we pick and choose our spots to figure out, all right, what's the best way to play 2021 Rams defense within the philosophy of how we want to operate.
If I could extrapolate one specifically, or a group specifically though, when it comes to the explosive, that they're skewing so heavily with in the passing game. And I'm wondering if you're seeing in those moments, if you're seeing anything pressure-wise that might be lending to that, or if you think you've noticed the tendency being more toward them coming against maybe quarterbacks who have been able to extend plays on you with their legs.
Yeah, I think that's certainly always a part of it. Again, it's hard to isolate one thing in particular. I think, everybody, rush and coverage all go together. You always hear about, being able to see things as one. If the rush forces the ball to come out quickly, there's less stress on some of the coverages, different things like that. And so, there's a lot of different things. There have been some extended plays and then some one-on-one ops where guys are throwing it up and they're making some plays, or there are some loose plays where, we might add some miscommunication with how we want to hit home with a 4-man rush. They break contain and guys are working in the flow of the quarterback, and it's hard to plaster in some of your zone principles for that long. Or it might just be something as simple as I'm in good position. My eyes go back. I just kind of get out of position. And at the moment of truth, I leave my feet a little bit too early, and then that ball goes over my head. So, again, that's what you love about football, Jordan. And I know you feel the same way. There's so many different things. There's so many problems to solve. But, really for us, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is, okay, what's the play? What's the intent? What are those mechanics? And how do we make sure that we're providing the solves for the problems that can arise? And then sometimes it's like, hey, get back in the huddle and play the next snap. We put you in a tough situation right there. It's always kind of who has the pen last, which is what makes this game so fun. And then there are some things that are designed where, whether it's offensive coaches or defensive coaches understanding how to, attack protections, vice versa, that you say, ooh, they did a good job right there. Let's keep it moving. Or a guy just makes an incredible individual play. And so there's not just kind of one all-encompassing answer, which I know you know that as well.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Fred.
Hi, Sean. My question is, could you elaborate on the offensive line through the first 5 games of the season? And with respect to the offensive line, without giving away any secrets or whatever, could you talk about when you're designing plays, how you implement the offensive line? Do you go on their blocking schemes and adapt that to the plays you want? Or do you say these particular schemes work and I want this offense to operate like this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, Fred, I think I've been really pleased with the way that those guys have played up front. I think when you look at the offensive line, it's all about how do they see things as a unit. When you talk about the run game, all right, how are we communicating? How are we targeting front structures? How are we making sure that we try to get a hat on a hat? And then, we're getting that ball to whether it's crack replace corners or middle safeties, and I think our guys have done a nice job of being able to execute in the run game with our combinations. We're a heavy zone outfit. I think they've done a really nice job both on the front side and the back side. Some of the other phases of our run game, I've been really pleased with those guys. They've been able to move the line of scrimmage when we've asked them to do that. There's been clear communication across the board for the most part. So I think we've performed well in the run phase of the offense. And then as far as protection, I think our guys have done a really nice job. I think, you ask about the design. It's always about, all right, we might have all the cool designs, but if you don't feel like you can block it and protect it based on some of these freaks that these guys are having to block, snap in and snap out, shame on me and shame on our coaches. And so our guys have done a great job of being able to, similar to the run game, see things as one, make the different calls and communications based on, all right, are we protecting with 5, 6, 7? Are we adding a couple guys into the protection and some of our max pro play actions? And so overall, they've done a really good job. I think Kevin Carberry's been done an outstanding job with Nick Jones and Zach Cromer. I think we've gotten great leadership from our edges. I think you're seeing Rob Havenstein take steps in the right direction. Andrew Whitworth continues to play at a really high level. I love the way David Edwards has played. I think his consistency, I think his length and athleticism has really shown up. Same thing with Austin Corbett at the right guard spot. And then I think Brian Allen has really solidified the interior parts of the offensive line with his command, his communication, and his competitiveness. He is a great competitor, and he's gutsy, and he finishes. And I think that those guys have really been a stabilizing force and done so many good things that have enabled us to be able to push the ball down the field. Everybody wants to talk about explosives, but do you have the ability to create the time, to have a feel for the soft spots in the pocket, to distribute the field in a manner that's reflective of attacking some of these coverages when you can get plays down the field? And you can't do that if you can't protect it. And so probably a little bit more long-winded answer than what you were looking for, Fred, but I've been very pleased with that group. And I want to continue to see them progress against what's going to be a really stout, tough, physical front in the New York Giants that we play this week.
One last question, a quick one. In the last game against Seattle, is there a specific play that while us that aren't part of the team are watching the game that we didn't notice something that the offensive line did that was spectacular or was pretty impressive that you guys acknowledge once you review the film?
Well, I think if you look at a lot of just even the runs that we had, there's a handful of ones that I can point out. But I think if you look at the effort, sustain, strain, and finish on Darrell Henderson's longer run, what Rob Havenstein does to Carlos Dunlop, watching the strain on the second level, whether it's Brian Allen or even on the back side of that run with Whitworth and David Edwards. You watch, and I think the run game is a reflection of all 11. Watch Cooper Kupp come through the hole and throw his shoulder on Jamal Adams and how it bumps him into the corner. Watch the way that Robert Woods sells on the jet motion. to try to be able to get that removal to straighten up some of the angles. Watch the way that Darrell Henderson really sets and presses that edge. And so the offensive line is a good reflection of the unit, but I also think what makes the run game special is the other guys that are part of that, whether it's Stafford carrying out his fakes, Darrell setting those blocks at the point of attack. You look at Tyler Higbee straining to finish there. And so that play stands out. I think you just look at the way that these guys battle, but I could go on and on, Fred. To be able to say, like, all right, this is a good example when you just watch the way they consistently compete, perform. And there was a lot of instances like that. And there's been a lot of instances through those first 4 games prior to the Seattle game that have been in alignment with winning football for us. And I've been pleased with that group. I love the mindset and the mentality that they display. I think it's a tough group, and I love that. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Greg.
Hey, Sean, I'm sorry if you addressed this before, I couldn't hear, but if Darious is out, what's that going to mean for the defense? Who's going to have to step up, and how are you going to have to make up for the absence of your corner guy out there on taking care of one of the top receivers on the other team?
Sure. That'd be something that we're in the process of working through, Greg. It might not be one guy. It might be kind of by committee approach. And again, those things are predicated on, are you playing 2 corners? You playing 3 corners? Do you get into some of your sub groupings where it might even be more than that? And so, we're going to explore all measures. Those will be things that we'll look at from our 48 possible practice squad guys as well. And, that's kind of what today will really involve is making some final decisions on that, knowing that he's likely going to be out for this game and potentially after that. And how do we get our ducks in a row that's in alignment with being ready to go against the Giants, but also not, minimizing the importance of some things after that as well.
And then you just answered the second question I had, whether the practice squad is a possibility for promotion and somebody.
It is a possibility. Some of the flexibility that you have with being able to flex guys up and then deciding after those, 2 times you've done that, whether they deserve to be on the active roster, it gives you a little bit more patience with how you can make some of those moves a little bit later on in the week if you haven't flexed guys up yet. And that's a positive for us and something that we'll definitely entertain as we really put our game plan together today and then tomorrow, and then getting it started with our players on Wednesday.
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome, Greg.
We're wrapping up with you, Gary.
Sean, Greg addressed part of what I wanted to ask. So I just wanted to ask, if you lose Darious for an extended period of time, what are you losing from your perspective? We know as observers and fans watching that, but from your perspective, what are you losing if you don't have him for the next 3 games?
Yeah, you're losing an outstanding corner who has position flex to play outside, to play inside. He's got great ball skills. He's got great concept trigger recognition, all the things that he did a great job of. And I think really, I was going to say, you could say the Giants was a coming out party. And then I'm immediately reminded of the unbelievable pick he made against Philly in week 2 last year. And so all this guy's done is deliver when he's been asked to. I think he set a great example. But I think when you talk about all the different great things that Jalen has done for our defense, it's been as a reflection of the flexibility that Darious Williams has. Now guys will be asked to step up. And that's why I think, to Greg's question, I don't know that it's that one person that you're asking. I think we're really working through what does that really look like, knowing that you still have an incredibly special player in Jalen, but Darius's flexibility and him being a special player is what enabled us to be able to activate those guys in different ways. And that's the beauty of what this week entails. It's a great challenge for us to try to really, it's a great opportunity for guys to be able to step up. And it's a great challenge for us as coaches to figure out, all right, how do we really do an excellent job of putting players in a position to have success, getting the most out of them? What can guys do? Not about what they can't do, but you're missing a lot with Darious Williams. And there's a reason why we tendered him as a 1, because of the belief and confidence we have in him and his resume and body of work.